Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome today to this BT InFocus webinar support for your upcoming exams. My name is Richa and I work as Education Support Manager at ACCA. So, this session today, Examiner's Report Unlocked, it is designed to support you with the insights from the latest examiner's report of business and technology paper. Hope you have already gone through it, you have seen it. If not, then we are here for you. We are joined with our expert tutor, Roger Gitonga, and who is here to help you with your exam preparation. So during this session, he will take you through some technical examples from previous exam that have been discussed in the examiner report. He will also share his practical advice for tackling with the upcoming ones. And he will also talk about the strategies which you should be adopting to avoid your common pitfalls and improve your exam performance. Towards the end, we will also be having live Q&A. So before I hand over to Roger, I will just take few minutes, very few minutes to cover a few housekeeping items. And at the bottom of your screen, you can see there are a few buttons. One is help icon that provides resources and information to help you resolve the technical issues you might experience during this live session. And then there are icons both for the slides and media player. So please make sure that you have selected both of them. There is an attendee chat function where you can engage with your fellow webinar attendees, but please be sure you should not be sharing too many of your personal details on the chat. There is a resource list icon also, and if you click on that, you will be able to find the resources which are very much relevant today with the today's webinar. And those resources include direct links as well. You can rearrange your screen to suit you and resize the windows if you need to. And if at any point you are not able to hear us, what we are saying, or you are not able to see any visual, please do refresh your browser. So registering for this session means you will be sent an email tomorrow with details like how you can listen to it again. So don't worry in case you miss any point or you want to rehear the things, then you can watch the recording of the session. I am now going to hand over to Roger and will be back with you towards the end. In the meantime, if you want to ask ACCA or Roger a question, please post them in Q&A section. And please mind it, the questions asked in Q&A box will only be answered. We cannot guarantee responding to everyone directly, either via verbally or via web chat, but we hope whatever the questions we share with you will be helpful to everyone. Handing over to you, Roger.
Right. Thank you, Richa. I'm so glad to be here. Really love how much love you are all showing. Richa, I believe the love hearts and the reactions were for her, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for celebrating her. As we begin this, I would love to do a very small introduction of myself, but honestly speaking, even before I delve into this, as you read it through, I'm more keen to actually find out more about you. So even in the beginning, maybe you can tell me from where you're joining from, and probably how this journey has been for you so far before we begin. So even as you read through the bio there, probably I can just try to appreciate where you guys are coming from, and probably appreciate as well how the journey has been for you. Okay, and I really love the fact that we can see here some from Pakistan. I see Trinidad and Tobago, Lesotho, India, South Africa. I see you, Yusra, as well from South Africa, Pakistan. Right, fantastic. Arabia, we have Zimbabwe there. We have all the way from Malta. We have Kenya as well, and that is where I'm from. I see as well from the UK, from Zambia, from Poland, from DR Congo. Look at this beautiful, beautiful representation. It basically shows that we're basically from all over the world, from as far as Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, India, Malaysia. This is fantastic. And I'm really glad that we even have from Nepal. I see you, Rajav. This is fantastic. And this just really shows how global we are, isn't it? So you guys are most definitely in the right, body, in the right place. And I'm really glad to actually take you through this particular webinar, even as we delve into probably maybe my experience as well, with ACCA and at the same time with BT especially. Let's jump there. And I see Annalena as well from Switzerland. Fantastic. Right, now let's jump into it. So what are we going to really look at here? What's going to be our focus? First and foremost, of course, we are going to delve a bit into the examiner's report, and then we're going to try and look at some of the technical examples from previous exams. I also love the fact that we will be getting some advice. My goodness, sometimes when you're reading BT, there's so much theory that you might actually ask yourself, when is it ever going to end? When is it actually ever going to end? So let's try and see how we can simplify this for you. And we're also going to try and avoid some common pitfalls. I love to speak about this because I've had experience before doing ACCA as well. I can confess as early as now that as much as it took me 2 years to finish it, I did fail 2 papers. So probably you're going to learn both from my successes and my failures. And I think both of them are winning formulas for you to thrive in this. And then from there, we're going to have a live Q&A where I can actually get a chance to just interact with you and try to understand some of the questions that you might have around this area. Now, let's delve into this. Why is the examiner's report so important? Now, allow me to state this first and foremost. From the time you begin BT all the way to your professional level papers, please try and understand how the examiner, views us, at least try to give us a chance to see the strengths that they might have picked out in candidates' performances. Secondly, the weaknesses, areas that we can work on. And then thirdly, probably offer some constructive advice for the future. So we really want to emphasize that you use this not only for BT, but also across your journey. All right, it's so important. Now, as I delve into how does BT look like? Okay, so first and foremost, this is how your exam might look like, okay, at the very beginning. It's just good to really get a pictorial representation of this so that on the day of the exam, you're not surprised, you're not shocked, you're not thrown off. Now, first and foremost, BT, of course, comprises of 2 parts. We have Section A, and in Section A, it basically requires us to answer 46 objective test questions. And this can be drawn from across the whole syllabus. So don't question sport. Don't say, I'll only read on leadership and management. I'm only going to read, on the concepts of stakeholder theories. You don't want to find yourself question spotting because questions can come from across the whole syllabus. Now, in this area, you could either have questions worth 1 mark or 2 marks. While we also have here Section B, and in Section B, there are 6 multitask questions, each worth 4 marks. Now, we do want to appreciate the fact that your exam should take you 2 hours, all right? It should take you 2 hours. Now, if you get the chance to finish it before then that's fantastic, all right? You can submit and actually get your results immediately. Now, this is how question 1 would look like. And I just wanted to really give you an appreciation of one question that I took from the specimen exam. Now, as you can see here, the first thing you see is this area on the exit button. Now, why I'm emphasizing on this is that some years back when CBE was actually introduced, when on-demand CBEs or computer-based exams were introduced, I remember a student who did not necessarily perceive the exit button as exit button to exit from the question. So they thought, I want to leave this question. I want to move to the next one. And they pressed the exit button after they had completed about 5 questions. Can you imagine when they exited it, they were asked, do you want to submit? And I don't know why they pressed yes. And the results came out. And unfortunately, even for the 5 questions they did, they scored nothing. So be very careful. Exit button is primarily to exit you from the whole exam. We also have ideally this, this progress tracker where it gives you a chance to see how many questions you've actually computed or done and completed as well. We also have, the amount of time that remains in your exam. Remember, your exam is a 2-hour paper. And we also have ideally the number of marks allocated for that question. This question was worth 1 mark. Now, questions worth 1 mark have only one correct answer from 3 choices, while questions worth 2 marks may have 1 or more correct answers. Now, the screen will inform you how many marks, each question is worth. We also have the help button that might give you detailed information on primarily how to use some of these tools. We have the flag button, which is so important in case you find you're not necessarily sure about a certain question. And without wasting too much time, you can flag it and move on to the next question. And then we have the next button. Now, stay with me. We are still getting to really just appreciate how the paper looks like. Now, notice this, where you're told which two words complete this sentence. Now, what I want to really highlight here is kindly a technique for your knowledge-based papers, but also your skills-based papers, but also your professional-based papers. So always read the requirement first, always. All right. And why I do this is because it gives you the privilege of really trying to understand what is expected of you. All right. Can you imagine? I've gone for a date and ideally my wife expects me to bring flowers, but instead I didn't read the requirement. So I instead brought only myself. My goodness, you can imagine how I'd have to do some very, very interesting damage control there. Right. So always read the requirement first. Now, I want to come to this second part. What do you see here? First and foremost, I want to appreciate the fact that the examination is entirely computer-based, entirely computer-based. And this is just giving you an appreciation of the fact that, this is how a 2-mark question looks like. Now, secondly, this is it's available on demand. Now, you'd really want to love and appreciate what this means. On demand is as simple as me telling you, my friends, I want you now, or by Saturday, or ideally by next week. And there's so much flexibility with this area because, knowledge-based papers, including corporate and business law, just gives you that flexibility to do your exam primarily at a time that fits you. Please also appreciate that all questions are objective and answer choices are either correct or incorrect. Now, in this paper as well, as you can see here, you're not able to really add comments or explanations to justify your answer selected. All right, so it's just very important for you to appreciate. You can't say, I chose this answer because, you can't do that. We also appreciate the fact that questions in part A of the exam test your knowledge. They test your understanding of topics across the entire syllabus. Now, some of these questions could include an introductory statement comprising of a few lines or even a narrative, as you can see here in this question, where you've been told of a guy called Darag and he's been appointed to the management team of a professional, you can see that, okay, and you can appreciate that. All right, so it gives you an introduction primarily. Now, you do also have to appreciate that there are no computational questions. So a calculator here is not required. All right, just good to know there, just good for you. Now, you also want to appreciate the fact that most candidates deal with the objective test questions in this part of the exam competently, by the way. However, some candidates do not attempt all of the questions, and this is so unfortunate, as a reasonably well-prepared candidate should be able to make an attempt at all questions. Kindly do all questions. So, for example, even if you're unsure of the correct response, you may be able to eliminate choices that you know to be incorrect and then use your judgment to select what you may consider to be the most plausible answer. I like to call it picky, picky, ponky. All right? You can choose exactly what works for you. Now, let's see here whether you know or you can actually use the game of elimination to your benefit. So I want to see here, can you use the game of elimination to your benefit? Now, for instance, let's look at this first question. All right, let me interact with you. I want to hear from you guys. You guys are brilliant people. The mere fact that you've chosen to actually do this demonstrates your brilliance. I'm not just lying to you. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Now, I want to particularly maybe just hear from you here. All right. Now, if you look at the first one, is this a coach, mentor, or a counselor? You're helping the players to anticipate opponents' reactions. What do you think that could be? Is that a coach? Is it a mentor? Is that a counselor? You know, you've been appointed as the management to the management team of a professional football club. I support Arsenal. Please don't hate on me. But ideally, you realize and you ask yourself here, if you're trying to help the players to anticipate opponents' reactions, what do you think that is? Tell me on the chat box, what do you think that is? Is that coaching? Is that mentoring? Is that counseling? All right, what do you think that is primarily? All right, what do you think that is? Look at your answers, trying to see. And don't be scared of also trying, okay? Don't be scared of also trying. What do you think that could be? Okay, so I see there quite a number of you are saying coaching, right? And you see, some of us have said mentoring, right? And there's an appreciation. I'm glad you're really trying. And you can really be able to try and anticipate and ask yourself here, how would you be able to know whether it's a coach or a mentor? Okay, and this is usually a very tricky question. And I'll come here and I'll appreciate the fact that I'm helping the players grow. I'm helping the players build their skills professionally. So that is, ideally, wait for it, a coach. Now, if I help the young players to settle in during their first week, you know, I'm trying to ensure that I'm not only focusing on their professional self, but I'm also focusing on their personal growth. I'm focusing on both. I could be mentoring them. Now, on the third one, I'm dealing with their personal issues. Now, note here, every single time I look at a question, I'm really being guided by what I know a coach is, by what I know a mentor is, by what I know a counselor is. So knowledge is very important, and that informs my application. I give you an example. Each and every one of us, I love the fact that we're from different countries. We can all agree that if I point at a chair, your knowledge depicts, none of us can argue that this is a dog. All right? This is a chair. Now, I know some of us can sometimes just argue for the sake of it, you know, and say, no, it has 4 feet, it has 4 legs, this could be an animal. You know, the people who always just like, don't argue over anything. But the thing is that you really appreciate the fact that this is a chair. Now, because of that knowledge, your application is, what do I do with a chair? I sit on it. So your knowledge informs your application. Now, if we ever see someone standing on a chair, we'd look at them weirdly. We'd wonder, what's the problem? We'd think they're rebellious, isn't it? So even here in this third question, if I see here personal issues, I will know for a fact that's counseling. They deal with that. If I know here that we identify each player's key skills and encourage them to develop new skills, and I'm focusing primarily on their growth as, you know, professionally, that's a coach. So you appreciate the fact that your knowledge informs your application. But anyway, let's look at this part. Another way that I like to test or touch on a question is primarily on underlining. This is a second question. Now, what do you notice between the first part and the second one? That was section A. Now, something you need to know about section A that is quite dangerous that I didn't mention is if we failed, let's say, for instance, just going back. Let me just go back. Allow me to go back, yeah? if I particularly, found myself in a situation where, for whatever reason, let's say I move back. Yeah. If I found myself in a situation where I chose the first one correct, the second one correct, the third one correct, then the last one I chose canceling, I would get everything wrong. Can you imagine? My goodness. That primarily I can actually find myself getting all three right apart from the last one. Now, don't worry. You guys are brilliant people, so probably you'll get everything right. But if I come to section B, there's hope. Because in section B, what I'd find here is I'll first and foremost appreciate that there's 6 questions in part B of the exam, and each are taken from one part of the syllabus. So none of the part B questions can cross over syllabus boundaries. So if I'm being tested primarily on personal development, I don't expect to see a question on something else like organizational structure. All right. Now, you'll also find a question on part A topics will not include requirements relating to other parts of the syllabus, and so on and so forth. Now, many part B questions are based on scenarios. So for these questions, it's necessary to read the scenario carefully in order to arrive at the correct answers. Now, you should read the requirement first and then proceed to look for the answer in the scenario. Now, this will save you time, and it will mean that the scenario will be read with the questions already in mind. So for instance, let's look at this question. You're told here there are a number of ways of to-one basis within the organization. Now, each has its own strengths and weaknesses and is appropriate in different work situations. Fantastic. Now, if I move further, I want to look at this part, and I'll just highlight one thing. The beauty about section B is I could get one right and I get the next one wrong, but I'm still fine. I get 0.5 for the one I got right, and the one I got wrong, of course, I will not score any mark. Okay? So if I look at, for instance, here, I like to pick up keywords. So for instance, if I find here an interview to help another person, I think when I'm helping another person to help themselves, I might be counseling, right? If I find here, the second one, a long-term relationship, I know many times the people I might build a long-term relationship with is my mentor, right? So that could be mentorship. If I find, for instance, I'm told here an approach whereby a trainee is put under the guidance of an experienced employee, and the focus is to help me to become better, to grow better in my skills. I know that I could actually be coached. So keywords really just help you to pick up the right answer, okay, as you go by. Now, I also want to particularly just appreciate the fact that even though Part B questions are not set at a higher level than Part A questions, a typical candidate ideally may need to spend longer on them because there's so much more reading to do. I'll give you an example, okay? Let's pick up task 2. Look at this task 2 where you're told an organization uses mentoring as a form of one-to-one personal development. Which two of the following are benefits of this approach? Now, the beauty about section B again is even though you're asking me for 2, if I get one right and I get one wrong, then I'll get 1 out of the 2. But if it was in section A, if I got 1 right and I scored and I got 1 wrong, then I primarily, unfortunately, lose out on none. I don't get anything. So you see here, one of the things I like to do, there's so many choices. I'm thinking, what am I being asked? I'm being asked about mentorship. I'm being asked about the benefits of a one-to-one. And I'm thinking, okay, I like to visualize myself. I have a mentor. And I'll sit down and I'll think, when I have a one-on-one session with my mentor, what benefit does it help me resolve a grievance? Well, is that a benefit? Can I do that any other way? Or is that the only way? Do I provide a role model for my employee? Probably yes, because I now have someone to look up to, someone to work with me. Remember, it's a long-term relationship. So I think probably that could work. Do they decide promotions? Maybe not. Again, one-to-one personal development. But career and personal, I think so. They can work with me, not only my career growth, but also becoming. So I'll be able to narrow down that. And sometimes maybe I'm not too sure. So I could have just eliminated and said, let me remove this, let me deal with that, let me remove this, let me deal with that, that kind of a thing. And it can really help. Now, I look at maybe some conclusive points from the examiner's report. Now, I want us to highlight a few things. One, familiarity with certain FBT topics. Now, it's interesting that candidates may already be familiar with some topics examined in this paper. For example, if you've ever studied, let's say, economics, or you've studied marketing before, or you've also done an accounting course before, you do appreciate the fact that you might spend less time to study some of those topics because you're very familiar with them. True? So it might come second nature to you. I know some students might have seen, for instance, Maslow's hierarchy before. So that means that it's not an area that you might spend so much time on because you've done it before. Secondly, the broad syllabus with many learning objectives means not every topic will be examined each time. So, however, as the syllabus is so broad, I actually tell my students sometimes, for me, BT, every topic could be a masterclass. Can you imagine? Like I could be talking about communication and I could change literally the communication patterns in an organization. I have personally taken before some, tips from time management as a topic and actually delivered it in a training. And guys were just so wowed. They're like, my goodness, where are you getting this from? And I'm thinking, this is what we teach in BT, So you can imagine the syllabus is quite broad. There's so many learning objectives in every topic, and therefore it might not be that every area is actually tested in your exam. I also like the fact that it's very common that with all ACC exams, candidates should adopt a systematic approach to their study, ensuring that all subjects are at least given appropriate attention. All right. I would say this, allow me to say this with focused, or at least with the future in mind. Don't focus so much on cramming, though I know that is one way you could get to pass this paper, but really appreciate what this could do to your transformation as a person. All right. Some of these topics truly are things that I personally seem to learn every now and then. I've taught BT for nearly about 11 or 12 years. And quite frankly, every single time I've seen it go through seasons, F1 as it was previously known, accountant in business as it was previously known, and now business and technology. And it seems like I always learn something new, something I can apply in personal life. And therefore, it's not just to get the content and to pass the paper, but it also helps in the future. It also helps primarily in SBL. It also helps primarily in audit. There's a chapter on ethics. It's the last chapter. I'm telling you, it has the exact same thing in audit. There's a corporate governance topic there. It's also the same exact thing in audit. So you can imagine how that can be very transformative, and it also makes your journey seemingly easy or easier as you go by. Now, understand a bit about all topics rather than having in-depth knowledge of a few. Okay, and this is just being able to say, if anyone was to ask you about a topic, you can actually, speak to them about it. If I asked you about fraud, you wouldn't be stuttering. If I asked you about technology, block technology or the advancements, you wouldn't be stuttering. You really have picked up a few things here and there about each area, and that can really help. Okay. And then lastly, BT requires a basic grasp, not detailed knowledge. It's the first paper in the knowledge level, and therefore you really do appreciate that we're just really testing on what you know. All right, so you may not go very deeply into the application bit, but we do appreciate that there are times you still need to think, okay? Doesn't mean discard your brain, all right? Now, another thing that the examiner says is please avoid question spotting and preconceived notions of exam. It's very easy for us to think, I think they're only going to test on this area. I think they're only going to test on that area. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. Secondly, most candidates complete the exam within the time. So time management has not necessarily been a problem with BT, but try to avoid rushing, okay? Try to avoid rushing. Also, read the question carefully. I have found myself sometimes missing out on wordings like don't, or which of the following does not. And then I didn't see does not, I saw does. Or which of the following is not true. But I didn't see that. I read which of the following is true. And that could have been because I quickly read through the question, and because I didn't read it carefully, not because I didn't know, it's just because I read it without care. Now, there's no trick questions in the exam, by the way. And that's just something to really appreciate. If a candidate is sure of an answer, you don't really have to dive deeply into the wording to look for hidden meanings. You don't have to be Socrates, okay? Or, you don't have to be so, philosophical. The answer, if you can see it, it is exactly what you're thinking, okay? It's exactly what you're thinking. So just keep that in mind, okay? Now, some technical examples from the examiner's report that I think I'd want to touch on. You're told here, the government of Westland is experiencing high rates. Actually, the first question is, what will be the effect of the economy of Westland of raising direct taxation by 5%? And then I find here, the government of Westland is experiencing high rates of unemployment, no economic growth, zero inflation. My goodness. High rates, no economic growth. This is a tough country to be in. This is a very tough country to be in, isn't it? It sounds like stagflation. Now, you told me it decides that it needs to reduce its budget deficit. And the only way that it can achieve this is by increasing the rate of direct tax by 5%. Wow. So already we are suffering. Already we have no unemployment. We have no jobs. The economy is not growing. Inflation is zero, and you want to tax me because you want to reduce your budget. So what do you think will be the effect of the economy? Well, I look at falling unemployment, and this sounds like, okay, maybe, but you're already having high rates of unemployment, okay? So you realize direct tax, increasing direct tax like income tax, pay as you earn, corporation tax, tends to reduce aggregate demand, true? And you therefore realize it will prevent economic growth, it will reduce inflation, it will even increase unemployment. So there won't be a fall in unemployment, there will be an increase because companies are even struggling to hold on to people. You also find here there's going to be a rise, there's going to be a rise in inflation. But remember, there's going to be a reduction in demand. So companies will be realizing that we can't sell our products, so we need to reduce our prices a bit because people can't afford. We also find here economic growth won't grow. It will actually decrease because guys don't have money, okay? Guys don't have money. So there will be a rise in unemployment. There will be a rise in unemployment. Now, candidates may mistakenly certain options due to high existing unemployment. But realistically, governments often prioritize inflation reduction or budget deficit reduction, even if it worsens other economic issues. Okay, yes, I see you've joined us. Fantastic. Now, I like to read. When I read the question, I like to take some time to really highlight a few things. For instance, you've told me, which two? So I'm very keen to ensure that my two, I don't choose one answer only. I'm very keen to appreciate the fact that I choose specifically the two that I'm looking for. Which two of the following are prerequisites for a company's published financial statements to be regarded as giving a true and fair view? Now, when I look at this choice, I see they follow all appropriate accounting standards, which is true. We use IASs. They follow generally accepted accounting practice, which is true. Now, when you say here they're free from all errors, that is not accurate. Now, I'm very careful with wordings like all, every, everything, those kind of wordings that capture holistically a certain thing. I'm very keen on that. Then we're also told here they contain all information relevant to the company's performance. They contain all information relevant to the company's performance. Now, it's not all information primarily. You do appreciate the fact that financial statements do not reflect all company performance aspects, okay? Because you'll appreciate that there are integrated reports that might do that. There are, integrated reports that might touch on the social, the environmental performance, which may be very hard to quantify. Let me just go back to really appreciate what Rupali is asking here. And I know I'll be answering questions as we go by, but let me just pick it up here because we're already here. So I want us to understand and appreciate this, okay? Because we're here for you. You realize I'm in a country where, damn, we don't have jobs. 2, the economy is not growing. And 3, inflation is 0. And then the government comes and then realizes that their expenses are greater than their incomes, right? So you'll sit down and then you think, my goodness, we are actually spending more than we have, right? So the government sits down and says, wait, we want to reduce that. We want to increase our income so that the difference between our income and expenses is not that significant. It's not that huge. So what they do, one way we can reduce our income increase our income, is probably increase taxes, And it's easy to actually increase the direct tax because we already have them within the tax bracket, the tax nets. We already have details about these people. So we can tax them easily. So they decide to increase the tax. Now, when they increase it when they decide to increase the tax, what do you think will happen to the economy? One, you see, can you imagine if I was being taxed 25% of my income, now I'm being taxed 30%. Can you imagine for a company, if a company was paying corporate tax of, let's say, 30%, now they're paying 35%. Basically meaning that people are going to suffer more. Individuals will have lower disposable income, right? They won't be taking home a huge chunk of their money. And companies will have to increase their expenses, or rather they will have an increase in expenses because of this. So they'll sit down and say, wait, can you recruit more people if your company is suffering? The answer is no. We can't recruit more people. So there won't be a fall in unemployment. Actually, there will be a rise in unemployment. We'll even lay off certain people because it's going to be a bit hard, right? Now, you also appreciate the fact that a rise in inflation will not occur. Actually, inflation will occur. And why is that the case? Because manufacturers will realize people don't have money. So we need to find a way to, reduce the prices. So there won't be an increase in inflation because inflation is an increase in price, but rather there's going to be a reduction in price because right now demand has also fallen. So we need to at least find a way to either, increase that demand for our products. So we will reduce inflation. And of course, the economy will not grow because people don't have money. So there won't be an increase, rather be a reduction. And I hope that makes a bit of sense, okay? For the rest of us in Q&A, I'll touch on the other question, okay? Fantastic. Now, I've answered this already, so you'll help me jump to the practical advice. Let me jump to practical advice for tackling December exams. Now, this is something that has worked for me. Let me be honest, I'll share my secrets with you. This has worked for me when I was doing my SCC exams, and I do hope it will work for you as well. All right, I really, really do hope it will work for you as well. So pick up a few things here. One, the first secret for me knowledge. Knowledge is so powerful. What do you actually know? You know, there's a difference between knowing and knowing of. Okay? There's knowing and knowing of. So I can say I know of, okay, Bexan. I can say primarily I know of, Hakan. I can say I know of, Fahima. But do I know them? Now, if I know them better, then probably I'll respond better to them because I know them. So knowledge, what do you really know? Please do not ever neglect knowledge. What do you know in your exam? So if I ask you here right now, what do you know about Mendel's matrix? What do you know about, ideally, the different categories of stakeholders? What do you know primarily, about the personal development plans? What do you know about the, the code of ethics, ACCA's code of ethics? What do you know? Very important. And what don't you know? Because your gap in knowledge can also affect you. Secondly, man, I normally say knowledge is one thing, application is wisdom. Because when you apply knowledge, that becomes wisdom, isn't it? And wisdom brings with it a lot of benefits. So I like to use the chapter quizzes in the study hub. They really help. They really do. You find here, you finished one chapter, and there's some 5 questions there just to really tease you a bit and see, do you really know anything? Like that. It really keeps you on toes. So always get the chance to practice. Finish those quizzes. Now, you might think, I've done that. Roger, I have my knowledge, I have my application, but the third one is have mastered it. Now, mastery here for me is mastering. You master 2 aspects. One, master the knowledge. Now, I know I spoke about not going in depth, but I really, really do appreciate that you can use, this is going to be used out there. I do trainings for companies, and I can tell you for a fact that knowledge, honestly, there are trainings I do with some of the content in BT, and people are wowed. People are wowed. They're thinking, my goodness, where did you get this from? And the thing is, master that. And mastery comes in the fact that if you ask me about this model, I can use it even in your practical day-to-day life. All right? And then master the questions. You can say you're good, but how good are you? And that's my last point. Practice. Now, practice looks at 2 aspects. Quantity, where you can do many questions, and quality. And quality, I mean, can explain your answer to someone. Fine, you chose the answer, but can you explain it? Quality gives you the appreciation of saying, I know why the answer, okay? I know why the answer is the answer. I know why B was the answer. I know why this was the answer. I know why it was internal stakeholder. So you can actually explain this. This shows me that you're very good, like not just guessing. So going forward, you'll realize that when you're dealing with, other particular papers, you're not struggling. I use this even for my students in the skills level, in the professional level. It really helps. So when you come here to the real world as well, which we already are in, it gives you the appreciation of the fact that you can practically, use it. Now, you can also consider purchasing the 3 practice tests primarily. That's also something I could advise. They really give you a feel of how the exam would look like. And it doesn't mean that the questions will be identically the same, no. But at least you can be able to identify your weak areas from there. You can also practice the specimen exam and even do the additional MTQs, which is found on the accaglobal.com site. And the last one probably is maybe watch the specimen debrief videos on the SCCA Student Study Resources channel. Okay, so I would also do this. Watch them to understand. They're there, and you'll sit down and say, "My goodness!" If you've not subscribed to that YouTube channel, please do. When you jump into the skills level, man, even the knowledge level, you really need the content that is being posted there. It's fantastic content. Not just because I'm in it, but I'm thinking if I was a student. And I really wish I could get some of the advice I was getting from some of the resources that are shared there. But also at the same time, watching the debrief videos gives you the chance to say, wow, So this is why the answer was like that. This is what the answer was. It gives you a very good feel why they chose that answer in the specific exam. Now, let me come to this part because we don't have mocks for you guys. As I jump into this, we can do Q&A very quickly. What are some of the strategies to avoid as you do your exam? Now, some tips to success. One, read the requirement well. It's an emphasized, I've overemphasized on this through and through, isn't it? Secondly, game of elimination. I have showed you, by the way, that sometimes I'm not so sure about the answer, truly, right? I'm not so sure about the answer, but at least I'm sure of this point being wrong. So I can eliminate, you at least reduce your chances of failing from 100% to even 50% if you're only left with two choices, isn't it? Which is better, which is good. And then thirdly, please get some rest before the exam. Sleep. It has been stated and it has actually been found out that ideally a rested mind has better retention in terms of memory and in terms of clarity. You also appreciate the fact that it gives you the privilege of remembering and understanding questions better. Basically, your chances of passing are higher with a rested mind. So sleep. Don't oversleep. Sleep. Okay? And this is something I always share with my students that I can share with you guys. This is outside the technical bit, and it's one area that you need to be very keen on. One, take care of yourself physically. Sometimes some of the students have not performed that well, either because they're not feeling too well or, things were not too good with their bodies, So it's very good to understand if sometimes, for instance, you have certain, things that, or certain challenges primarily, with your physical well-being, it's very important to just be able to time when you can actually be able to do the exam when you know that you are at your best. Okay? Sleep how much? Sleep how much? Now, if I was to ask you how many hours I sleep, I think I would not be a very good recommender. But ideally, 6 to 8 hours, okay, is always the most healthy. And then we appreciate here emotional well-being. I always tell people, and it seems like it's a joke, please, if you're dating, just tell your person, don't break up with me now. Break up with me afterwards. But it's actually a very serious issue. Guard your heart. Guard your heart. Guard your heart. Okay? Guard your heart. And I say this because sometimes one of the causes of failure is because something happened at home. You'll find that there are times when, something happened at home that threw you off completely. Guard your heart. All right? Then 4, well-being. Now, when I talk about mental, I'm not just talking about your mental health. I'm talking about the quality of your thoughts. The quality of your thoughts. Sometimes you could be your biggest fan or your worst critic. Okay? And then lastly, spiritually. Okay? There's always going to be a higher power. Pray. Spend some time in prayer or meditation, but at least be in clarity that internally you're fine. Now, I want us to reflect on these pass rates. Look at how good the pass rates are. 85, 79, 83, and we're basically seeing now 89%. This should ideally show you that primarily we are on an up scale. We're going up, we're growing. That means the chances of you passing this paper is high, and that should give you confidence that you can do it. All right? Now, I can see some of the questions have been answered, but primarily we can pick up some of the questions I have been asked here. Can Kaplan and BPP kit be useful to do practice? The answer is yes. They have past exam questions primarily, and they have also questions that are very up to date. So I do believe they are very helpful. All right, they are very helpful. Then we appreciate the fact you asked here. What happens if you answer one correctly and leave the other blank in section A? All right, what happens if you answer one correctly and leave the answer blank? If you're asked for 2 questions and you've chosen one, or you're being asked 2 options, answers, and you gave one answer but you left the other blank, then you will not score. Actually, you'll get it fully wrong, 0. All right? If you're being asked for 2, please choose 2. All right? Can we contact you personally after this session? You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. The only Roger Gitonga in this world, weirdly. All right, so you can reach out to me there and then we can interact, okay? Am I allowed a calculator in mobile or just the calculator or blank sheet in remote exams? It's a very good question. First and foremost, there'll be no need for it, okay? Primarily, there'll be no need for it. So you don't have to tempt yourself. Okay, normally you would be allowed the calculator, but you do appreciate there's no need for it primarily. In this paper, so you don't really need to carry. Okay, I know there's also the question, the notepad, the blank sheet. This question, you don't really necessarily need it per se. Okay, for BT. All right, you don't need them for BT. Recently did practice of the topic personal effectiveness on study and found certain questions that were not mentioned in the study hub. Aha, very interesting. I'm keen to know which ones. Now, this is something I need you to also bring out and something about BT. There are times when BT can be quite, for me, reflective of how good you are on a few things. One, you understand what's happening globally. Okay, so one of the things I do a lot is just really watch, the business. You get blown and see. It's just very good to understand what's happening around. Secondly, what's happening inside you. A question like personal effectiveness, as much as you may not on the direct, exact content around that, there is an appreciation of the fact that this is just touching on something you would normally reflect on. And I do believe that that can also be quite helpful, where you just take some time to reflect and think about what you can grow, how you can become. And I'd be very keen to understand which question that was. It's a fantastic question. How do we absorb the paper pressure? Lovely question. I personally used to have a very weird, besides what I've shared with you, I had a very weird approach. I used to ask myself, because I used to really tense, just like you guys. I used to really tense. And I found myself in a situation as I would walk to the exam center, okay? As I would walk to the exam center, one of the things I would actually think about is what would happen if the world came to an end? What would happen if the world came to an end? All right? And I sit down and think, would my exam pressure really make sense? And the answer is no. And I would take it an hour at a time. I would take it an hour at a time. A minute at a time and say, fine, I've moved this. I have all this to cover, but at least I'm covering something. At least I'm doing something. And sometimes I'll even just take a breath and walk around. During my study breaks, so I was extremely strong because of constantly working out. But also at the same time, I would also take some time to just really reflect and, just ponder and ask myself, is what I'm really true? Is what I'm feeling really? Is what I'm feeling really worth? Putting so much emphasis on. So sometimes I'll sit down and then think, okay, is this really worth stressing about? The answer is maybe not. I appreciate the fact that it is there. It is real. Money has been spent, but I can overcome this. This thing has been created by humans, so my mind can conceive it. My mind can understand it. My mind can perceive it. And therefore I can do it. So even speaking to myself positively used to really work. And I would also take some time and just be able to think, what have I left that I've not read? I know I wouldn't overthink about the paper or what I'll do. I'll not try to be prophetic in my own, in my own paper and say, I think that the exam will come fully. I wouldn't do that. I'll just take some time and say, I think I've covered enough. I think I've done well. I think I've understood the content. I think I've practiced enough questions. I believe I can do this paper, and I'll keep them, and I'll be very careful with two things. I call them the ear gate and the eye gate. Now, the eye gate is what you see. So be very careful with what you're seeing. It could be negative, connotations. You could just read one person's status who is giving up, and you're thinking, my God, this is a message to me. I should also give up. Be very careful with what you're saying, and be very careful with what you're listening to. I'm very careful whenever I'm either driving home or, if I was going for an exam, I'd be very careful with what I'm listening to. This could be music, this could be podcast, this could just be an instrumental, anything that would feed my soul into calming me down, I would do. Okay. Then we also appreciate here is doing the exam at home rather than the hall any easier. The exam is you, and it's you, Nazran. It's you and the exam. Sometimes, of course, the environment can, people react to environments differently. If there are people who feel comfortable at home, home is where you find comfort, then doing the exam is comfortable. But if you're living with 5 other people, who are always noisemakers in the house, and you'll struggle. Telling people, keep quiet, guys, I'm trying to do my exam, or, such disruption. So, of course, the pros and cons can be weighed based on individual to individual. Okay. Let's see. Have I missed out on any other question? So I want to score full in BT. Is this possible? Very, very possible. We've seen it. We've done it before. So it's possible to score everything, okay, in BT. I'll be honest with you. What are some of the tips? What are some tips if you are dealt an emotional blow and you're knocked off course? I'm glad you've asked this. This is a very sensitive question. I'll give a story based on this very quickly. I had a student who was misdiagnosed with a terminal illness some time back, and they missed literally half of the semester as we were covering, or half of the coverage. They came back 3 weeks to the edit, and they told me, you know what, Mr. Roger, I don't know. I was misdiagnosed with cancer, and I don't know how to pick up. And I remember we had to sit down and first and foremost shape their mindsets into believing, listen, you can do this. Now, in terms of the emotional aspect, this can be from one to another. I sometimes recommend, therapy, counseling. I recommend, positively to yourself. There are times it also depends on what emotional blow this could be. It could be grief. It could be someone left you, for instance, and, that particularly can shake you off. And I think there are times whenever you're going through this, and it knocks you, of course, the beauty with your exam is maybe you can push it another 2 weeks and take some time to heal and get your mind, in check, so that when you're doing the exam, you feel like you're a bit more ready. And that's the beauty with on demand. You can reschedule, but don't push it too far, because, you also don't want to find yourself procrastinating. Get a chance maybe to talk to someone, someone who can actually walk you through your thoughts, your emotions, and maybe just give you a clearer view of where you are at, where you're positioned. All right. So that in itself is very important. Okay. Now, is the recruitment and selection still in the syllabus? This is a fantastic question. I know you might find it in some, some approved, some content providers, but at the same time, maybe not in the study hub. And you do want to appreciate the fact that you might not find questions from this area, okay? It was dealt with, it was removed. Now, is the study hub enough to pass this exam? Of course, yes, it is. 100% it is. 100%. There are also some short videos I did for BT. They're on YouTube, but I did them many years back. They're called AB, but there are some short videos that can be very relevant just to help you grasp some content, okay? You have asked here, thank you very much for the info. Okay, I'm a college instructor and I'm preparing students for FIA. Fantastic. The mock exams record is a 50 to 60 on average. Do you think they'll be able to pass the live exam? Many thanks. Yes, mocks are to mock. Mocks are to awaken them. And, what really happens is that if you can work on the areas of their weakness, and be able to address their strengths as well and improve that, then they will most definitely pass. They will most definitely pass. I can tell you for a fact, I have scored 100% pass rate in my BT classes at least. And you'll find that there's some students who are scoring 30%, 40% in the mock, and they just needed to tweak in a few things here and there, and they could actually shoot up. Okay, so it's very possible. What is the best method of study? Wow, that's wild. That's very wild. Because I would say the best method of study would actually work also on the person I'm dealing with. There are some people who prefer, reading content than doing the questions after, right? I was personally the type of person who I was a reflection. I used to reflect. I was a reflector. So I'll take the time to reflect on the information and then I'll do questions. And then if I didn't get some questions right, I'd go back and find out why I didn't do them well. I'll try to understand what did I fail in, what did I miss out on, why didn't I necessarily get this answer correct. So I'd be very keen on some of that. I was also the type of person who, during coverage of content, I would study with people, but in my last revision weeks, I would study by myself. So you see, the people who would prefer studying in groups, I personally, if I was working better alone at the last week. So that was also just to guide my thoughts so that I don't take anyone's negativity. Sometimes someone can say, oh my God, this is so much content, I'm going to fail. And I don't need all that. I just need to focus on me. So I was very keen on that for myself. Okay. Unfortunately, we might have to, just stop there. And I really, really just want to appreciate each and every one of you, first and foremost, for just listening in, for tuning in, for engaging, for asking all the questions you've asked. I do believe that you're going to pass this paper and you are going to succeed. And if you get a chance when you pass, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and just say, sir, we did it, and I'll celebrate you and I'll be so happy for you. And I can't wait to see how you're going to grow, through this journey. ACCA is such a rewarding journey. I've enjoyed it as a member. I've enjoyed it as a tutor, of course. And you see, it's also given us a chance to interact, and hopefully when you come to my, country, we can organize for you a small game drive and you can get a chance to see around. But anyway, thank you so much and all the best to each and every one of you. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you very much. It was really a great session. And hope I am audible, right? Okay. I think students really
Audible, yeah.
got very emotional in terms of sleeping. So, yes, it's good to have good sleep of 8 hours, definitely. But I would like to mention that please keep yourself awake mentally, and that is very much required from now onwards. So, physically, yes, rest is very important. But again, you should be very conscious about your studies, prepare well, make a plan, and be confident. You are here to succeed, and we are always there to help you out with everything. And with this, we need to bring things to a close. And as I mentioned previously, there are resources in the resource section. Please copy the links with yourself so that you can refer them later. You can watch the recording of this session as well. And you will receive an email tomorrow with the details that how you can watch it again. And with this, thank you everyone for joining in today. Thank you, Roger, for extending your support. And it was a brilliant session. Thank you very much to the team at the back end who have really supported us with answering all the questions and looking at your chats and everything and delivered this session successfully. Wish you all the very best for your exam preparations and also your exams. Thank you, everyone.